Ivory Coast in West Africa is the largest producer of cocoa bean in the world. More than 40% of all cocoa beans in the world comes from Cote d'Ivoire. Cocoa growing was massively promoted by Ivory Coast government following independence in 1960, becoming the backbone of the country's rise as one of the West Africa's leading economies. Today, Ivory Coast produces on average around 2 million tons of cocoa bean per year, equivalent to more than 40% of the world's market. The Gold Coast, which is modern-day Ghana, at one time in history was the highest producer of cocoa bean. Ivory Coast later overtook Ghana as the highest producer of cocoa bean, while Ghana now ranks second in the world cocoa bean production by country list. Cocoa was first developed as a crop in many ancient South American cultures, with Aztecs and Mayas being the most well-known of this indigenous population. Researchers have found evidence of cocoa-based food dating back several thousand years. The credit of having first brought the cacao tree from the New World to the African tropics undoubtedly goes to the Portuguese. They are reputed to have planted cacao in the island of San Thome as far back as 1822. It wasn't until about 1870, however, that cultivation was undertaken seriously there. By 1895, the export of cocoa beans from the island had reached 1 million kilograms, which was a considerably quantity for those days. With regard to the Gold Coast, which is modern-day Ghana, which has been for many years the leading cocoa producer of West Africa, it is stated that in 1868 the Basri mission at Akrepong in Akrepong Eastern Province had a few cacao trees growing in their ground and that these were flourishing. It is also stated that in 1879 a native of Mampong, also in Akrepong, brought back pods from Fernando Po, an island of the Cameroons, where he had been working, and raised a few trees which he planted on his farm near that village. Crew family first planted cocoa in Ivory Coast. The Crew family on the southwest border between Cote d'Ivoire and Liberia began cultivating cocoa and coffee by 1890s. The cocoa production began in the southeast in the 1900s. Production by Crew ended for various reasons, including disruption caused by demand for forced labor by the French colonial authorities. The French attempted to make the planting of cocoa obligatory, but it was not popular with farmers. During the 1920s, the depreciation of the franc increased the profitability of export crops, including cocoa, and production in the southeast increased. There was abundant forest land and extra labor was provided by the Boli from central Cote d'Ivoire and better from the southwestern forest. These migrated to cocoa pioneer areas in the southeast to avoid forced labor and harsher colonial regime at home. The benefits of the production were often provided between landowner and laborer in an abusa contract, where the migrant worker kept 1/3 of the crop, giving the rest to the landowner. The French authorities encouraged migration of the Mosi people from Burkina Faso to work on their plantation, and from the 1920s they swelled the labor force for cocoa cultivation, finding it preferably to working for Europeans. In a change to the social structure, young people often started new cocoa farms, whereas in the past they would have worked on their parents' farms. In 1946, forced labor used by the French in their colonies for building infrastructure etc. was abolished. This helped cocoa production increase further in Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire, with newly increased freedom of movement for Africans, a cocoa pioneer front moved westward across the forested area, encouraging by high world commodity prices in 1950s. After independence in 1960, forest reserves were opened and further expansion of cocoa production strongly encouraged by the government. This was aided by plentiful migrant labor from Mali and Burkina Faso. In 1977, Cote d'Ivoire overtook Ghana as the world's largest producer of cocoa bean. Production has continued to increase dramatically by expanding the area under cocoa. In 1980s, under international pressure to protect the remnants of Cote d'Ivoire's forests, The government prohibited settlement in the remaining forest reserves. The policy of encouraging expansion of cocoa cultivation was officially reversed in 1988. This seems to have had little effect on production, but the expansion in area does seem to be slowing down. High world prices for cocoa in the 1950s also encouraged increased production in Ghana and were the basis of ambitious plans for the country's development upon independence. World prices fell between 1960 and 1965, reducing the government's revenue and the farmers' share of the world price determined by the Ghana Cocoa Marketing Board. Farmers responded to the fall in prices by reducing both the extent of new planting and investment in existing plots. Even during the boom in the late 1970s, the real price received by farmers remained low due to government price fixing and currency overvaluation, effectively another tax on farmers. The low productivity of old trees, often neglected, was exacerbated by drought and bushfires. By 1983, production had fallen to less than 170,000 tons, having averaged over 450,000 tons in the 1960s. Another factor reducing official production figures in Ghana was that many people took advantage of high prices in Cote D'Ivoire to sell cocoa across the border. Smuggling has always been common when there is a significant price differential in either direction. For example, an estimated 8 to 10% of Ghana's harvest was sold in Cote D'Ivoire and Togo in early 1960s. In the late 1980s, international pressure was put on Ghana to raise producer prices. Since then, the production recovered to levels approaching those of 1960s, although with increased production elsewhere, its shares of the world market has been greatly reduced. On August 5, 2021, Ghana and Ivory Coast signed the headquarter agreement for Cote d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative. The agreement that was signed 3 years after signing the Abidjan Declaration, a framework set up to implement a strategic partnership agreement to link both countries in maximizing cocoa production. You can watch my video about how cocoa arrived in Africa next. Thanks for watching and God bless.